All right, today I'm very close to 100K, so we're going to go over AMA stuff. The first thing seems to be from Patreon, and the question is, when is the next Franklin video?
God damn it.
I don't have the question for that, but someone else might.
Oh. It's coming, all right? It's going to happen. Shut up.
So if you don't know who Justin is, he runs a podcast.
This is my steamer trunk full of podcasts.
I'm pretty sure that Justin had one of the earliest leftist urbanist channels on YouTube. So if you haven't seen that, go check out his Do Not Eat channel and then go check out the Well There's Your Problem stuff. Anyway, back to the episode. We'll do this one by Trevor B. Out of every transit system you've been on, which transit system would you ride again? So I guess this is like, which system is your favorite that's not SEPTA? And even if SEPTA is probably not her favorite. So.
Which one would I ride again? I would ride most of them again. What's like a good one? Surprisingly good one. Let's go for like a weird one.
I mean,
one you would not expect to be good, but is.
I mean, I hate to be like, Philly isn't aesthetic, because there is some places in Philly that are very aesthetic, but the most aesthetic city that I enjoyed, like just riding around the trains for a week, was easily Chicago. Like, I have not beaten that experience. That is, yeah, especially the Brown lines is so weird. Definitely need to get back out there again. Chris and Noah, I will see you sometime and annoy you guys at IRM again sometime.
I'm going to say Charleston, West Virginia.
Oh. Just the light rail?
No, there's no light rail there. It's just buses.
Oh.
Buses are really fast. They come surprisingly frequently. I mean, not that frequently. But it's not somewhere where you would go and expect there to be good public transit or even serviceable public transit. But it works perfectly well. And there's barely any traffic, so the buses go real fast.
That's interesting. The only place where I've been... I mean, so usually when you go to a place and there's only buses, you don't usually ride the buses because they suck. So that's probably a good pick.
You had to put a little bit of thought into it. But I would say the bus experience I had there was much better than the Uber experience I had there because the driver was racist. And the bus drivers were not racist. At least not that I was aware of.
The state-mandated Uber drivers were not racist.
Yes.
Do you think that Seattle using light rail as a primary mode of regional transportation will be a problem in the future? That is from an Alien Mango on Twitter.
I'm going to go with yes.
I mean, I'm always going to clown on Seattle for not accepting the metro way back in like the early 70s. So
you see those guys? They have like 3 light rail vehicles all put together, and that's like their default size of train. Mm-hmm. Like that's 6 cars. Like at that point, just go to Home Depot, get some planks, build high platforms everywhere, and just put a regular metro train on the tracks.
Just do the Futurama thing where they just ram the larger gauge train through the tunnel.
You could still run it on overhead wire, Ian.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could do like Rome does with the overhead wire metro.
Unfortunately, Seattle has been beaten by the superior city of Cleveland with their red line and their full-size rolling stock that uses overhead wires. If only they were like Cleveland.
Those are good-looking cars.
They are.
They're really good-looking
They're
cars.
essentially like the Broad Street line, but with overhead.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. I think they were built by Kawasaki also. So when we see a Japanese train in Japan, we can say, place Cleveland.
Yes.
What transit project are you currently hyped about the most? Well, I mean, I'm not a Zoomer, so I don't say hyped, but I'm very excited for certain projects. I think the Hudson River Tunnel's beginning. But if we're talking about something that's finishing soon, probably the East Side Access, just because it's like the project everyone's been waiting for. But, yeah. How about you? I
don't know what I'm hyped about. I'm going to be honest. It's been, especially like living here in Philly for about a decade now, and seeing no progress on any front. I'm just incredibly cynical about everything. I have become black-pilled on the transit question. Nothing's ever going to happen, and everyone is just going to be miserable forever.
become the old boomer that just says, well, back in my day,
Exactly.
I wrote this. And now it doesn't do that.
Like maybe trolley modernization will happen. Maybe.
Yeah.
But I won't believe it until I physically see an LRV on my street.
How different are Mexican cities and American cities right at the border in terms of walkability and transportation? Yeah, so how about Latin American city planning? Do you know much?
I don't know anything about it. I'm told I'm supposed to read Radical Cities. I bought Radical Cities, the book, and I haven't read it yet. So that's my opinion, is that I don't know. Also, some of those favelas look like they got great views. You know, I know it's supposed to be horrible poverty and gang violence, but also like, what about those views?
They're cool. I mean, Mexico City in general is very interesting. I mean, one of the largest trolley bus networks in the world is in Mexico City.
Ooh.
So I have to, like, eventually I will get down there. I will be the very pale gringo that is down there, but using my very rudimentary Spanish. But yeah, I think that a lot of Latin American cities are very cool. There's not many others that I know very much in depth of. Panama City is interesting.
Yeah.
I, again, don't know much, but I know the general layout. Mexico City is probably, again, the most I know about. And it's the one that I'm most frustrated about, especially because when I know a lot about NDME, which is the nationalized railroad Mexico had, and then neoliberalized about a decade later, which is frustrating.
Urban planning in Latin America, you always got to think about it. Donde está la biblioteca?
All right, we have a very existential question by Brandon Shaw. Why is Pittsburgh transit system called the Port Authority Transit? I think it's because it's on the Susquehanna, and that's like...
No, it's not on the Susquehanna. It's on the
Ohio, that's it.
And the Allegheny and the Monongahela.
That's it.
And the Port Authority of Pittsburgh, I want to say. I don't remember if it's... Yeah, the Port Authority there, I'm not sure if the Port Authority that runs the transit is separate from like the Port of Pittsburgh, or it's like the Port of the Allegheny River. It's a massive port complex there, and the transit system used to be a part of it. But I think they're now separate. But they still call it Port Authority because, you know, that's a really heavily used working river right there.
Yeah. All I want to say is that Pittsburgh needs to bring back all those wacky streetcar lines that they used to have. Like they used to have turnbacks and like and weird crazy bridges with like 4-5% incline on them. Like they had some wild streetcar stuff. If you look up,
it looks like a roller coaster.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of them literally had like bridges that went like turning and down. Like look up old pictures of Pittsburgh streetcars. They are wild.
So look up new pictures of Pittsburgh. Everything's crazy there. Everything's just weird as all hell. I like it a lot. I like Pittsburgh.
They have a lot of bridges.
I know it's a crime to say that here in Philly.
It is, yeah.
I do enjoy a nice Pittsburgh.
I've seen you visited Syracuse, New York in a previous video. How do we encourage walkability and biking in a city with so much snow for a good portion of the year? Well, I assume just remove the snow would be the obvious answer.
Heating coils in the sidewalks.
This is true.
It's easy. It's cheap. You install it like once. If you maintain the sidewalk, it works pretty good, well all the time, right? Now, of course, this is America, so we don't actually maintain sidewalks or anything, right?
I'll make a video on sidewalks eventually, but sidewalks are frustrating because unless you're in like a city center, most of the time sidewalks are part of the private property of whatever they're on. So the private owner has to maintain them, which is the most like frustrating thing. Like, why? It should be part of the street right of way, but you know.
The thing about biking in the cold is all you have to do is listen to your mother. Put some gloves on, you're gonna catch a cold. All right. That. Once you have the gloves on, it's fine.
And then the most like cheating thing, if you're really against biking in the cold, is get like those gloves that hook up to like a battery where they have like heating coils in the gloves on the handlebars. Those are cheating. Those Yeah.
Just like e-bikes.
Yeah, e-gloves. This is from Jono DeWitt. Should Auckland be building a tunneled light rail as planned or do something else? Well, I don't know. From the little amount I know about Auckland, it is one of the hardest places to build light rail, apparently, with NIMBYs and different things, which is interesting because New Zealand has a lot of interesting transit politics. It has some crazy regional rail systems that are single track for majority of their lines, and then it has a mixture of narrow gauge and standard gauge. New Zealand and Australia, cursed places for rail. You guys are trying and doing your best, but oh my god, just crazy history down there with that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about New Zealand rail, other than some of it's good, but a lot of it isn't.
They have one intercity train that used to be good that turned
Right.
into a tourist train.
I see.
Yeah.
Oops.
I really liked your California high-speed rail video. What, in your opinion, can be done to improve the planning for this project?
Do less of it. Less planning, more building.
Pretty much. I mean, so this goes to a future video that I'm going to do, which is on the Glassboro-Camden line. And it's pretty much, you can plan for as long as you want. But if you don't start building the thing, you're going to start having problems.
Yeah.
It's just for two reasons. One is that you just won't start building it because you'll just forever be altering it.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that the more time you have between announcing the project and building the project, NIMBYs can get involved.
Yeah, time is money. Go, 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 go.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Get those shovels in the ground. Go find some bored teenagers. Have them give them some shovels. Pay them $50 a day. Boom, you got a grade.
What do you think of Montreal's REM? Do you think other North American cities should emulate this model of transit? I think you could kind of do something like it here in Philly.
Where was REM from, though? Pretty sure it was not Montreal.
I think they're the first one. Well, they're kind of copying somewhat of Vancouver, but I'm not the person asked for that.
No, I was talking about the band.
I don't know.
I don't know either. They did make that song, Driver 8, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was was about the Southern Crescent. That does not go to Montreal either.
No. So REM, from my limited knowledge or some knowledge of it, is that it is basically they're turning their commuter rail system into, or part of their commuter rail system into a few new subway lines. Or I think two. And that mainly involves just dealing with all the things you would need to do to convert those stations and all the other places into metros. And for the most part, it's a very good project. But again, the REM has the same problems we were just discussing, is that they waited too long on certain portions of it, so a lot of NIMBYs are getting involved now. And
that's Rem de la Est.
Oh,
the actual main project is going on as planned, largely. But de la Est has been sort of truncated, which makes it less usable. A lot of people they're like, this should be a subway extension, not an elevated train, right? But they also don't want to. But there's issues with the whole Montreal metro system is designed that it can only be tunneled, so you couldn't do a partially tunneled system that would integrate with the current metro because the cars aren't actually waterproofed.
Wait, what?
The cars aren't waterproof. Whole systems, underground or indoors.
Oh, wait. Oh, okay. Are those the ones with the rubber tires then?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They're really nice. The new ones, they're really good.
I've never ridden a rubber tired metro. I mean, I guess
You gotta go to Montreal. It's the best city in North America. Mexico City might be better, but I haven't been there.
Is Quebec City better?
No, Montreal is better than Quebec City.
Okay.
Quebec City is more pretentious. I mean, Montreal is already kind of pretentious. I will say that. But that's just because you're dealing with French people, right? And you got to deal with a baseline level of.
It's just in their language.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but they can't help.
They can't.
But Montreal is very good. The food's very good. The metro is great. And sometimes if you go there in the winter, you can watch a bus slide down the street.
They put the chains on the bus tires.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If they forget to put the chains on the bus tires, chaos ensues. Also, they've done a whole lot of walkability, bikeability enhancement recently. Montreal is good. I cannot say enough positive things about Montreal. Go there.
Which, if you have not seen the channel on YouTube called Oh the Urbanity, I hope I'm saying that right. They were originally based in Montreal, and now they're in Ottawa, and they have
bad move. I
know. No, but now they have fantastic videos on both of those cities. So either or. Oh boy. Okay. So this is from Lucas Fowler on Twitter. Opinions on BrightLine in Florida. Okay. So this deserves its own video.
They need to grade separate that shit. There's no two ways about it. It's killing way too many people. You need to just bite the bullet and grade separate.
It's the Florida man remover.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing about, again, this is something that cannot be helped. In Florida, there are a lot of Florida men, and they have a right to live like the rest of us. And the fact is that if you're in Florida and you see a railroad crossing that's adjacent to a four-way intersection, you're going to go drive up to the light and park on the tracks while you wait for the light to change. And there's nothing that can be done about that other than grade separating.
What I've seen in a lot of videos is a lot of them seem to be the gates go down, and I think someone goes around the gates. And usually, and it's because they think that they're used to the FEC trains, which are like accelerating out of Miami, so they're going slow.
Right.
So I think they're used to that, and they get hit by BrightLine.
Yeah.
But it's like, you think after seeing so many of like the news reports in the same area
about the train of death.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they don't know which tracks the train of death runs on.
And then
they might be looking out at the CSX tracks, like I heard this is where the train of death is, and no, actually, further along in your commute, that's where you get got by the train of death, as opposed to the CSX train, which
this is true.
The train of sunshine and happiness.
So, like I said, BrightLine deserves its own video. For the most part, I think it's a great project. It's probably, and like one of my friends has said that lives there, it's probably one of the only ways you would have gotten in the current Florida government a train built in Florida, which I kind of agree.
At some point, the state of Florida is just going to come in and subsidize the grade separated because people are going to get angry enough. You may as well bite the bullet and get it over with.
I have a bet with someone that we're guessing on how long BrightLine will go before the state or Amtrak will take it over. And I'm guessing like 10 to 15 years.
The other reason they're going to have to grade separate it, sea level rise.
Yeah,
they're going to have to put that whole thing on a viaduct as well as all the cities and all the roads. And they'll do it too before they let that investment in South Florida real estate go away. They're just going to put the whole damn state on a big hydraulic ram and jack it up like 5 feet. And continue to do that every 50 years or so until humanity goes extinct.
It's going to be like Futurama, where they build New York 2 on top of New York 1, except it's going to be Miami. They're going to build Miami 2 on top of Miami 1. And they say, speaking as someone that lives in the suburbs of Lexington, Kentucky, I look at the Stroads and the mediocre bus system and wonder what the first step is. How would you begin to undo the damage in a way that works in and of itself? Well, my first answer to every single time someone asks this question is always reforming zoning laws, because that's the easy, low-hanging fruit that everyone can just point to. So there's that. But honestly, the question is, you have to look at a map for a while of a certain area, and you have to say, what is the area in which I want to build the town center in an area that is a place? Because the issue with a lot of American planning is there are towns, cities, and places. And towns and cities you go to. Places exist where people live, and that's all they are. And there's a lot of places in the U.S. that are just suburbs that are just houses and some big box stores, and no one goes. There's no reason to go there. Just people live there. So what you have to do is you have to take the place and turn it into a town. And the way you do that is you have to figure out where in that place you turn into a town center and build it like a town. And usually it's where the big box stores are.
See, I think what Lexington, Kentucky needs to do is build on its strengths, right? And one of its big strengths is raising horses, right? And I think if they brought back the horse as a means of transportation in Lexington, Kentucky, that would make a lot of sense because they do have excess horses. Not all of those race horses they breed there are going to be, Kentucky Derby champions. But if you could get like a good, like old-timey omnibus system going with all the second-tier horses that you're just gonna write off, right?
So make the tram system horsepower,
and that would be good for like traffic calming, right? That would be good for like depending on how many. I don't know what the average speed of a bus in Lexington, Kentucky is, but you might match it.
Maybe, yeah. Gotta put 4 horses on the.
A little bit more difficult in the suburbs, obviously. Maybe do like a horse tram, so you can use fewer horses for the same amount of. I'm just spitballing here. There's also a big job creation opportunity. Right?
It's a jobs program.
Yeah, it's a big jobs program because not only you're making jobs for the horse car operators, you're also making jobs for the pooper scoopers. Right?
This is true.
I think this is a win-win. You get a lot of fertilizer, you get export.
You're making jobs for the people that grow the horse food. Yeah.
I'm just saying. I think it's Lexington that's like the big horse raising area, not the racing area. That's Louisville, right? But all the horses come from that area, right? I don't know. I've only been there once, and that was when Liam and I had an argument because I was like, I've never had Skyline Chili before. We need to go to Skyline Chili. And Liam was like, no, we're going to Cookout. And I was like, I've been to Cookout before. And it's fine. I know it's entertaining. You can go get a burger with the side of burger. But like, come on. I still haven't had Skyline Chili to this day. And my one friend in Cincinnati just moved out of Cincinnati. And she's up in Burlington now. So now I have no excuse to get Skyline Chili. So if you're
Burlington, Kentucky.
Burlington, Vermont.
Okay, there's a lot of Burlingtons.
Yes. So anyway, if you're in Cincinnati or in the surrounding area and want to be friends with me, that sounds cool. Is what I'm saying.
Go explore the abandoned metro there, which
yes,
eventually should be turned back into subway.
You gotta get that water main out of there, but apparently there's a clause in the contract with the city that the water main has to be moved at the water company's expense if they want to put the subway back in.
That's a good clause.
Not back in for the first time.
If you talk about public transit in Luxembourg, I would be happy. The thing about Luxembourg, it is the Rhode Island of Europe, where basically, but the thing that everyone knows about is they have free transit, and it's sort of one of those things where it's Luxembourg, just like Providence, Rhode Island, is the only thing in Rhode Island. So what is the city in Luxembourg that's the big one? Is it just Luxembourg?
Yeah, the city in Luxembourg is Luxembourg.
It's the city-state, yeah. So yeah, it's pretty much the same, where it's like the only thing that matters about Luxembourg is the city itself. So it's only the transit in the city that's free is the stuff that matters. The train that goes through Luxembourg kind of matters, but most people just go around it because they're going between like 2 other places that have high-speed routes. But Luxembourg itself is great. I would, again, when I get to Europe, I'd love to stop there on the way through whatever journey I'm doing.
I've never been there. I assume it doesn't really exist.
It's just like Providence; it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I've been through Providence, so I know that exists.
That was a mirage.
Yeah, that kind of. It was pretty late at night. Both times Liam and I drove through there.
Why can't Boston connect their major train stations, but Philadelphia can? Good question, because we didn't ever spend more on road infrastructure, and we connected our train system, where Boston made a lot of money invested in the Big Dig and didn't do the train thing they should have. So I might talk about it in a future video because I was there recently. But yeah,
I think the answer is to that one is that I want to say someone asked, there was a pot of federal money for transit projects in Philadelphia. And they asked, I think it was Rizzo actually, Okay, you either get the Boulevard subway or you get the commuter connection. Pick one. And he picked the commuter connection.
Which, I guess...
I think the Boulevard subway probably would have been a better
probably,
investment, honestly.
but we know why he picked the center city one. It's because it connected to the suburbs. So.
Yes, this is true. This is true.
So, I mean...
He made the decision that a man like him would make.
Yeah. I mean, I love the Center City connection. It's one of my favorite things about Philadelphia, and like since I live here in Center City, it's one of the most useful things for me because like I can go in either direction depending on where I need to go. So like that is great. Just SEPTA needs to run more trains.
Yeah, I don't know what Boston had at the same time. They might have had some kind of big pot of federal money, and what they decided to do with that was violently protest busing.
Well, this was the late 70s?
Something like that, yeah.
So what did Boston do in the 70s? Write that in the comments.
Racism, probably.
Rowley on Twitter. Congrats on 100K. Any thoughts on Copenhagen's artificial island project called Linettenholmen?
Linettenholmen. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I don't like the name. I don't like the idea of Copenhagen in general. I don't like the concept of the Low Countries. You know, this is the cradle of capitalism. It's
this is in Dutch.
Okay, yeah, it is in Dutch. No, I wouldn't wait. It'd be Danish, not Dutch.
Danish, yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, same country.
Yeah, they're all the same. Don't worry about that. I'm sure they have some kind of blackface festival too.
Harbor Tunnel and Metro. It looks like they're just adding. Oh, it's
Why does it have the I Heart New York heart on the logo?
Oh, it did.
Yeah, look at that. You see that?
Kind of.
Yeah, that's the same. It's the same font too.
This is proving.
No, it's not the same font. Excuse me.
Oh, they have their canals.
The buildings look good.
Those look very.
It's certainly better than any apartment building we could build in the United States.
Cruise ship terminal.
Oh, that's going to be miserable.
It's going to be.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
that's going to suck.
Do not put
That's
a cruise
really
ship
suck.
terminal.
Yeah.
Cruise ships are bad.
Yeah, I have to go to what are those cruise ship stores, like Swiss Village or whatever, that's right next to all the cruise ships.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be horrible. Ooh. Just from the cruise ship guys.
Starfort.
Yeah.
Ooh. Why does Bowdoin Station exist in Boston? Why doesn't the Blue Line just end at Government Center? And where would it go if you extended it? Well, I have an answer for this because I was just in Boston and I stayed at the end of the Blue Line up at Wonderland, which I thought was hilarious that there's a station called Wonderland. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the obvious answer is the Blue Line should be extended to Lynn.
Yes.
I think there's even like at the commuter rail station there. I think there's like an extra platform for when they were going to extend the metro there.
Well, that would be the logical terminus on account of it being on the right of way of the Boston Revere Beach and Lynn Railroad, which of course was unique in being a narrow gauge electric interurban.
The things we lose.
Yes, exactly. Although what we got is also pretty good. I mean, heavy rail subway is probably better than interurban under most circumstances.
This is my thoughts on MBTA. Well, at least the metro subway portion. The system and how it links with each other, very good. Just all the frequency, very good. What I don't get is just I'll be riding the Blue Line, I'll be riding the Red Line, and it'll just go slow. Like all of a sudden, like there'll just be an area where it just slows down, and every time I would ride the Blue Line, just different sections would slow down. There'd be no rhyme or reason for it. It would just go slow, and there's no like red signal ahead, but it just slow down.
Just slow down, yeah.
I don't know why I do this, but
it's
like
very similar to Pittsburgh, actually. Also coincidentally named the T. Pittsburgh light rail goes very slow through the tunnels in downtown Pittsburgh, and you're like, this is embarrassing. I don't like how slow this is going. Can you go faster, please? All right, here in Philly, the trolley's going the tunnel. They're going like 40, 50 miles an hour.
The thing is hunting like crazy.
Oh yeah, I mean they don't care. They don't care at all. They're just like, People got to get to work.
Yeah.
People got to get to work. We're going hard.
The Boston Green Line is like, oh, if I go over 5 miles an hour, I'll derail. Well, the Philadelphia trolleys are like, I'm going to hunt at 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, just go. You got to go. You got to go for it. And you know what? There's never been a derailment down there of note. So I think we got the right method here.
Well, the crazy thing was, I was on the new GLX extension going to, what is it, Union's something.
Is that thing open?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, part of it is. There's a little Leshmere branch that goes Leshmere and then Union Center or something. It's
something like that.
Something like that. But and then the other part, the longer part of the GLX is going to open like later this year, I think. But the thing that oh my god, fucking just put fucking real signals and real Metro line signals on the fucking green light. There was 2 stop signs on the damn thing.
All right, I'm glad you swore before me. I was trying to hold my tongue.
No,
I didn't know if this was going to be family friendly or not. We should establish the parameters before we did this.
The stop signs. Why is there stop signs? We were going over the brand new flyover into the branch, and there was a fucking stop sign, like brand new, great infrastructure. Stop sign. Why? Just
So no one wants to put the money into CBCT.
Cock and ball torture control.
Yes. Sure. Let's go with that.
Every time I see that on some subway forum, that's all I can think about. What are your favorite neighborhoods in Chicago, and what are your favorite buildings in Chicago? You go first with buildings.
I've seen one building in Chicago, and that's the terminal at O'Hare Airport. I was a very small child, so I guess that would be that's my favorite neighborhood in Chicago, is the O'Hare Airport terminal, because that's the only one I've been to. I didn't think it was very good.
So I liked, despite them being car-centric, the marina buildings are very cool, or as other people know them as the corn cob buildings.
Oh, those are good buildings.
Yeah, I like those. Those get way too much hate. Those are good buildings. The other ones I liked was I think it's called the Commerce Building, which is by the Rock Island Station. That one's very cool. And then, of course, the Sears Tower. It's not the Wilkes or whatever the fuck it's called now.
The Willis Tower.
Willis, whatever. It's the Sears Tower.
No, it's not sticking for anyone.
Yeah. And then, what else? What are good buildings? There was a bunch of new ones that I actually liked a lot in Chicago. Honestly, there wasn't like individual buildings I liked in Chicago that were nice. It was just Chicago in general just has like the general allure of nice. Like it's good looking.
I have not been to Chicago, but I have seen the Blues Brothers, which is very similar to going to Chicago. I would say some of my favorite buildings in Chicago are Ray Charles's music shop, and I thought the orphanage was very good as well, and also the big government building they get chased through by 1,000,000 cops. That's a good one. That's a good building as well. Lower Wacker Drive, very good. That intersection with the L where all the police cars crash, that's one of my favorites. The unfinished off-ramp where the Nazis in the car go flying, that's a good part of Chicago, I think. I hope that happens like daily there. That would be like a good daily spectacle.
This is true.
Yeah. The bridge that they drove the Nazis off of, they all had to jump off. That's another good Chicago landmark experience.
It's true. So what else? I mean, Union Station. I love Union Station. The only part about Union Station I thought was a bit like stupid was when you go down to platform level. I know it's an ADA thing, but it's the dumbest ADA thing I've ever seen. Every single platform has a voice on it that says track 2, track 2, track 2. Like it just repeats itself, and they're all going at the same time. So you just get this chorus of computer voices that are just yelling at all these people in this like area before you get on the trains. And it's like, I don't know if that's helping anyone. Like, There's got to be a better way to do that. Also, why the hell is Union Station not through running? I don't get it. Why?
Well, it's probably the single worst designed station
It's so
in
bad.
the United States. I always felt like it was kind of
Penn Station has
You sort
leagues
of-
above.
you sort of look at there's a definite learning curve, which you can see through how the Pennsylvania Railroad built certain stations, right?
Yeah.
So you really sort of you start with actually start with Broad Street Station,
Exchange
big stupid
Place.
terminal. Then you go to Washington Union Station. The through running was a lot more convenient, and they sort of tried to capitalize on that with Penn Station. And then they do Chicago Union, and like this is foolishness. Building double stub-ended terminals. I guess they wanted a nice concourse, which no longer exists. And when they realized their mistake with it, though. That's when they built 30th Street Station, which is probably
The best American station.
One of the best American stations, I think.
What's a contender?
Newark Penn.
Yes. Okay.
Newark Penn is a very good station.
Well,
That's
it's-
probably the most modern station in America. The most modern large station. Not in terms of like the date it was constructed, but in terms of
And
like,
how it functions.
How it functions, yes.
Yeah. It also has a metro line that's built into the center of it, which is
Exactly.
fantastic.
Really convenient cross-platform transfers.
Yeah.
Get to Lower Manhattan in less time than if you had gone into regular Penn Station
And
and
like-
taken the subway down.
And like any European station, it has light rail below track level, so you just go and take the light rail to somewhere else in the city. Like
Newark Penn is a good station.
Newark, there are very few cities. I will eventually make a like list or video of like cities that are underrated that people think are shit, and like Newark is one of them. Newark is way underrated.
Newark has like that 8-story tall double-decker movie palace.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunately it's in bad shape, as are all those kinds of things. But you know, that'd be a cool thing to rent.
Finally getting reinvestment in it, and since it's in the glorious state of New Jersey, they're actually doing the zoning and everything very well the first time around. Now that it's getting redone, there are being large buildings like 30 floors, like apartment buildings being built in Newark with minimal parking at all. So like they're doing it the right way the first time.
Thanks, Jared Kushner. Yob Tom Shika, that's a good name.
Yeah, it's a good name.
That's a good name right there.
Was World War II, the Depression, or the auto industry more responsible for the end of the growth of old-style rapid transit systems? Probably World War II and the GI Bill with sending people out in the suburbs, I would think, right?
This is a confluence of factors here, where you have to blame, I guess, like several forces here, because you have the Depression, right? That cancels a lot of investment in private or private-ish rapid transit system. Because, like, I don't know, your poster child here is New York, and like it was private-ish, but it wasn't like private.
It was controlled private.
Yeah, it was controlled privately, but the construction was subsidized by the city, and the franchises were awarded by the city. You also had caps on fare increases, right? Which that's not a bad thing, but they weren't matched with investment in the system by the city, right? And so that was you started having these systems that got hard. It got harder and harder to break even before the Depression, right? And if you're like a trolley system, like out in like a smaller city, chances are, the city regulated the fares. Also, the city held you. You were responsible for like road maintenance. You were responsible for all this other stuff. Meanwhile, you have the private automobile coming through, and it's gaining more and more acceptance. And this is a big factor in like your reduced revenue. Maybe you want to increase fares to preserve service. You can't do that because again, it's regulated. People say you're gouging the public, right? This is I don't want this to be construed as like a dig on like fare regulation, but like the reality of the time was that you were sort of, as long as you were going with this private model, you were not going to be able to run the level of transit service that you needed to maintain, to provide good service, to remain profitable, there's very little you could do if you were like a trolley company to keep your head above water without like, okay, public ownership, that was an option. Most of the people who ran those things didn't want that. They tried everything they could to avoid it.
Yeah.
But you were locked into these contracts that were very bad for the trolley companies and very good for the cities. Until all of a sudden they were bad for the cities as well because they lost the public transit. And the Depression sort of accelerated this decline. World War II was honestly pretty good for public transit in general.
It did, because it forced people to not drive.
Everyone had to go everywhere constantly, and they couldn't drive. And then of course the post-war suburbanization push. Everyone had cars. Everyone had a little ticky-tacky box in the suburbs, and you didn't have to see any black people ever. And that was nail in the coffin,
pretty much,
right there. Except in a couple like big cities like New York City, where you still had population growth everywhere, depopulating. I mean, so it's like a whole confluence of events here, but like a big factor is just the charters for these companies were just very skewed in favor of the city, just because the expectation when the charters were done was that trolley rapid transit traffic would grow forever, and that was not the case.
As capitalism would suggest happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Baltimore?
It's good. I like Baltimore.
Baltimore is good.
I like Old Bay.
Like a lot of Rust Belt cities and cities with problems with crime, it's just comes down to a mixture of just a very mismanaged government and just a very misunderstood population, I think is the best way to put it.
I like Baltimore. I like the Inner Harbor. I like Old Bay. I like Eden crabs. I like whatchamacallit, Camden Yards. I like Baltimore Penn Station, very good station.
In a weird location.
Yeah, you can go see the Shot Tower. You can go see the Domino Sugar Factory, and the whole thing's lit up. It's
Trolley
cool.
Museum.
Yeah, the Trolley Museum, the Railroad Museum, very good for seeing some of the oldest preserved locomotives in America.
Also very unique steam locomotives.
It's a really good collection in that museum. What else is good about Baltimore? Row houses are good. The zoo, it has penguins in it, which I like. Which is not the case for the National Zoo, which is what I grew up going to. No penguins. They had pandas. I don't care about pandas. I want to see some penguins. Come on, give me the penguins. They're much easier to keep than pandas. I don't know. Pandas are boring. They just sleep all day. Baltimore Zoo, very good. What else? I used to go to regattas there when I was in high school. We rode on this outer part of the Inner Harbor, or it was like a harbor near the Inner Harbor.
The outer intermediate harbor.
It smelled horrible. It was a nasty, briny smell everywhere. It was just you would be rowing in a race, and then you'd get to this brine spot, and you'd get this horrible smell, and then all of a sudden you'd be like on the verge of heaving while you're like trying to row in a race, right? But the thing is, the other boat was also experiencing it, so it didn't really affect competing with them. What else is good about Baltimore?
So Baltimore is one of those cities where every time I read like an article online about like, oh, millennials or Zoomers can't afford houses, I'm like, just move to Baltimore.
The light rail is terrible on Howard Street. That's just really bad for light rail. It's so slow. Oh my God, I can't believe they got away with building that.
Banned cars.
It has dedicated right of way, and it goes like 2.5 miles an hour. It goes so slow.
That's probably just terrible traffic.
All the stores are closed on that street. Oh my God. It's like every single stereotype that you try and play down about light rail on street is completely true on Howard Avenue. It's or Howard Street, whatever it is.
The funny part,
it's absurd. It's like it's disgraceful. They should have built it as a subway.
Well, it's like every Rust Belt city that has light rail of some sort that like street runs, same problem. Like in Buffalo, New York, they built this fucking line. They built the downtown section of the light rail above ground.
Yes.
And then they built the suburb section of the light rail below ground.
Yes.
So the
mind boggles.
So the slow section of the Buffalo light rail is the downtown, and then the fast section is the suburbs. So I guess sure, there's so many of these type of like light rail lines out in like the Rust Belt cities, like Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Baltimore, like we said, Buffalo. What are the other ones? Minneapolis has a newer system, so that doesn't count. I pretty much named all the ones. Maybe St. Louis, that might count. But St. Louis is also weird because they seem to actually keep good track conditions and they go fast. They seem to be like Philadelphia where they don't care. They don't care if they're going fast.
Well, I would say my verdict on Baltimore is good. High tier city. Very high tier. Almost at Philadelphia levels.
This is from the Voodoo Child in my Discord. What's your opinion on Metro North's and potentially LIRR's acquisition of Siemens Dual Mode locomotives? Do you think it's more of an issue of lack of political will to secure electrification? Oh man. So addressing Metro North first. The Metro North. What would it be? The line that goes to Connecticut. That should be owned by Amtrak. There's no reason for Metro North to own that, but that's not related to what you're asking. You're asking about the Siemens dual mode stuff, which would be mainly running on the Harlem and the Hudson lines. Mainly the Hudson lines, because past Croydon, Harmon, whatever, they run diesel to Poughkeepsie. Theoretically, it wouldn't be too hard to electrify the rest of that to Poughkeepsie on third rail, but it's in the 21st century, you probably shouldn't be extending more third rail systems, unless you're LIRR and you're corrupt as hell. But if you're Metro North, you probably should be thinking about switching over from third rail to overhead at some point in the future. It definitely would be expensive to do, especially because when you go into Grand Central, there isn't much room above you to put wires, or I don't know the specifics, but I know there's not much room. So it's hard because Metro North is stuck between like a difficult situation, an expensive situation. So the easy way out is to do a dual mode. Theoretically, because you're not running that far, it wouldn't be terribly so most of the time, if you're running a service, you do not ever want to use battery locomotives. Battery locomotives are a meme. They are only useful if you have a hybrid situation like I guess LIR too, but like Metro North, where you could possibly put third rail at like stations in between and then run a hybrid mode out of the third rail section with batteries only, and then stop at stations with third rail.
They're fine for like work locomotives on the subway.
That too.
That's like a good application for a battery locomotive. I think everywhere else, you probably want to avoid that. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not planning for the future. You know, I don't think we're going to be in a situation where battery technology is good enough to like have, I don't know, something light enough to run like a electric multiple unit type service practically for a long time, if ever.
So what are you saying? You're saying we can't repurpose old underground rolling stock with batteries and then start up a metro?
The pop-up metro, guys. It's an interesting
It's a neat
idea.
concept, but
yeah. I mean, even the Amtrak wants to buy those dual diesel battery locomotives to go into Penn Station, and
That's just for
they need a whole battery tender to go like,
it's just
the last 2,000 feet into Penn Station.
It's the the
furthermore,
Empire Service. Yeah.
Furthermore, they're not going to be delivered until 2030. So that's 8 years before we have battery technology that's that good enough.
And it wouldn't take much effort to just electrify the west. What is it called? The west something.
The West Shoreline.
The West Shoreline on Manhattan. Like just electrify it.
It is electrified.
Well, no, only this small section.
The last 2,000 feet are electrified, sure. But like this is a no-brainer. All that crap needs to be overhead line electrification. Just do it. Just bite the bullet. Just do it. You got to think for the future on all this crap.
It's not.
No one should even be considering like a new non-electrified line at this point.
It's not even that far. It's just. This
is not rocket science.
How long is Manhattan from Penn Station? Like, it's only probably like 4 miles of like electrification. Like, just Amtrak.
Yeah, you just electrify. Yeah, you just electrify that. Well, because I don't think they use the. I think they run diesel once they're out on the Hudson line.
Yes.
Yeah, even though they got the third rail right there, they can use.
No, yeah, the Amtrak Empire Service literally only has the third rail pickup, and you can tell if you ever ride the Empire Service. There's a portion when you're in the tunnel on the west side, and you're approaching Penn Station, and the lights flick off, and you're like, why did the lights turn off? And then that's because they switched from diesel to the third rail pickup.
And that's when they decide to use it too.
Yeah, yeah.
They run diesel into Penn Station all the time. They don't give a fuck.
Yeah. I don't get it.
What are they going to do? Are they going to get a police train to pull them over?
So
you can't run diesel in here.
So I will make a case for battery locomotives because electric locomotives are notoriously good, but they have regen braking, and what regen braking does is basically turns your motors into generators when you slow down, and that's known as dynamic braking. And in older systems, that usually just goes to some big resistors in the roof and it just bleeds off in heat. But newer systems, you can generate power back into the wire, and theoretically, you're powering your system with the train slowing down. Problem with that is if there's no other train within the same circuit, you are technically just raising the voltage on the wire and using the wire as a bigger resistor. Unless there's another train in the same circuit, there's no practical use for regen braking as a good, efficient way of using the power.
You can do line side batteries though.
That's
what SEPTA does. Is they put the batteries on the ground rather than on the train, because the train needs to be light.
Yes.
Put the batteries on the ground where it doesn't matter how heavy it is. Right, and also it's not going to catch fire in the tunnel and murder 10,000 people or whatever.
Yeah, But theoretically, if you for some reason didn't do that, you could make a hybrid locomotive that was an electric locomotive with a battery part of it, so that you could run off wire a little bit. Say you're in like a yard, or say you're a freight locomotive that has to go on like a short stub or whatever and drop off something. You could theoretically make a hybrid locomotive that could run off of wire and also regen power when needed, or put power back in the wire when needed. But
plus, if the battery's not on the train, you have a wider selection of battery technology available to you. Maybe you got like a whole bunch of open land. You don't want to put a battery in. Maybe you can do some pump storage or something.
Pump some water up the hill. Let's see.
I think they got one in. There's a big pump storage facility right at Safe Harbor Dam that I think stores excess energy from the Northeast Corridor. I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on that.
Oh, it's up to Susquehanna, I think. Yeah. I remember looking at that because if Google Maps would track hours like a video game, it would be my highest played.
Same.
This is from North Mountain Films. What are your thoughts on HART in Honolulu?
It's pretty cool.
It's neat.
It's a cool idea.
It's neat. My issues with it are that when they built the thing, there's a section of it that is west of Honolulu that sort of, it's a straight line, but it sort of wiggles a little bit. And that's because when they built the thing, they didn't want to put the pilings in a place that would affect traffic patterns. So the thing, if you look at the thing in like a telephoto lens, it actually wiggles and goes back and forth a little bit. It's not straight.
Does that actually affect speed?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. It's fine. It looks kind of goofy, but it's fine.
But it's one of those things like, come on, stop.
Thank you.
Stop making excuses for like car traffic and just build the thing correctly. Like that's such a thing in like American transit, whatever.
See, the other thing is that they're building the section out from like middle of nowhere to Aloha Stadium or whatever it is first, and they're not even bringing it into downtown Honolulu until the second section. The third thing is their newspaper there hates that project for some reason. They have a vendetta against HART. They are really mad at it. And the project has gone over budget. It's delayed. Sure, that's every single transit project in America because we don't know how to build anything anymore. We forgot. But that's not a fault of HART itself. That newspaper has been very unfair, very, very unfair to HART. Very nasty.
There seems
bad, folks, very bad.
It's a bigly problem. There seems to be, and this is like every transit project ever, there seems to be one newspaper that half of their job is to entirely fixate on something the state is doing with the transit project and just hate it. Like that's just their job. And like the I think it's the LA Times that hates, there's like one guy in the LA Times that all he writes about is just how terrible California high-speed rail is. And that's all he does. And like I know in New Jersey, NewJersey.com or whatever the one New Jersey has, there's one or two people that just write about NJ Transit projects and how bad they are. And that's all they do. It's like
you always need one guy to get really mad about stuff, but in an unproductive fashion. Like not even like it's not constructive at all. I mean, it's not constructive because it's not construction. Anyway, it's not like you have these people and they get mad about the failures of the projects. They have no ideas how to fix them, right? They have no ideas like okay, what should be improved. They just don't like the idea of public transit in general. That's like the long and short of it.
But they don't say that.
Yeah, they don't really say that, but they're like. Because there's like legitimate criticisms you can make of American transit projects. They're too expensive.
Yeah.
They take too long. There are examples internationally of transit being constructed much cheaper, much better, and much, what's the other one?
Reasonable.
Much more reasonable, right?
Yeah.
And they get better outcomes there that we don't have in the United States. But you can look there and say, okay, maybe if we're making the sort of, I hate to say the word fiscally conservative argument that this transit should be cheaper, you could point to that and say, we should have these nice things. They shouldn't cost this much. I think that's very similar to like healthcare, where we pay the most for the worst outcomes. For transit, we pay the most for the worst outcomes. But a lot of people, they're not interested in that. They're interested in saying, wow, look at the government wasting money on this, nice little train when you could have like a 75 lane highway.
Oh, okay, Toronto.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, don't you want to drive on the 405 every day? Like Ontario 405?
It's a 401, 405, is it?
Yeah.
One of them.
I think it's
There's a highway there that's actually still privatized.
A lot of the high occupancy toll lanes are privatized here in the States now. They're all owned by Transurban, which is an Australian company.
It's the Reading company coming back.
Yes.
Having their revenge.
Yeah, Transurban sounds like a Twitter account from like a trans-urbanist, but is actually an Australian conglomerate.
It's actually lame.
Yeah, it's actually not.
It's actually not cool.
Gay towns, meet Transurban.
All right. How could this is from Nathan or Talrin on my Discord. How could you how could the Southeast improve its rail corridor more? How could they rebuild their cities with to be more transit oriented? All right, you pick a city in the Southeast that you want to harp on.
Are we talking Southeast United States?
Southeast United States.
Okay, because I was thinking maybe the Southeast of England, and I was like, I don't know. Okay.
Well, they're from North Carolina, so I was
Well, okay, that would make sense. Yeah. So anyway, the natural candidate for rail transit, I believe, are the North Carolina Outer Banks.
okay.
Yeah, it's one road, right? And you just lay rail along that road. And it's beach houses, so they're already all really close together, right? And then you can have the station like every mile or so. Maybe you run a local express service down about, I don't know, all the way from Cape Hatteras down. Cape Hatteras is at the bottom, excuse me. Cape Hatteras maybe up to Kitty Hawk or somewhere, or Kill Devil Hills. Yeah. So that's my opinion. The issue is that because the Outer Banks, of course, shift a lot, you would need some kind of moving foundation, right? In order to accommodate when the banks shift, right? So that's going to be the difficult part. Or I guess if you lay it at grade, it'd be less of a problem. So my thing is we need to densify the Outer Banks. Not that much though. It can be more like row house density. Maybe you got to get rid of some of those strip malls up at Kill Devil Hills and Kitty Hawk. Maybe put some apartment buildings there. Make it more of an Atlantic City style thing. Less because the example there would be
using Atlantic City in a good light. Yeah.
Well, the other example would be something like
Dumptown is pretty cool.
Something like Virginia Beach, which I think it looks like crap. I don't like it.
Cape May.
Cape May is pretty good. Yeah. I mean, the Outer Banks again. It's mostly beach houses on relatively small lots, except for the really stupid huge beach houses, which are also a thing. So yeah, that's anyway. So you apply that model to the rest of the Southeast, which is no, you can't do that because the Outer Banks. That was just my first thought about where it'd be good to have rail transit, because there's a lot of people who get a beach house and they're like, oh my god, I need to go get more beer because
and I'm stuck in this traffic.
Yeah, I'm stuck in the traffic on the one road, right? And I'm drunk driving as well. You want to avoid that. You give them some kind of. It would be interurban style transit. Honestly, I bet you could do the whole thing relatively cheaply on as long as it had a top speed of 50, 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I think you're doing pretty good. You could single track it for a whole bunch.
Like a Patco type.
Yeah, I'm thinking more like a Ottawa O-line type situation.
The Norristown high speed line.
Yeah, because I think you could do it for pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's a model for you, but that only works on the Outer Banks. I don't know what you'd do anywhere else.
I mean, if you're talking about the Southeast, I assume just the whole section of the country. But
you could burn down Atlanta again.
Well, okay, yeah, I mean, burn down everything that isn't not the square mile in the center.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would be an option. You could go General Sherman and just, come back
strategic burn.
Yeah, we do a controlled burn.
Oh my god, Atlanta is probably the best case of a place in the country that needs a regional rail or commuter rail service. I don't understand how they don't have one. It's baffling that the place with one of the worst traffic in the country does not have come on, Nashville beat you guys. They have one of the they spent $50 million. And they have a commuter rail line that has I think it's 9 or 10 stations, and it has a 40-minute runtime, and it
has 2 inbound trains and 2 outbound trains a day. It's kind of mediocre. I'm gonna say
it's very good, but
it's not that good.
More than Atlanta. That's what I'll say. But the thing is this stuff is not hard to do if you do want to try to start something up like Nashville did. They literally bought the locomotives and I don't think the locomotives, but I think they bought the old gallery cars off of Metro for $1.
You would have, in order to do commuter rail in Atlanta, you would have to negotiate with the freight railroads. And Atlanta is still a big hub for interchange and stuff. And they did just close one of the big yards there. But you would also have to figure out how to site the downtown terminal, right? Because you would need I mean, if you're being serious about like Atlanta, like regional rail, you need something hefty somewhere, right? And it's going to be like somewhere near like 5 points, and then you're going to have like 6 or 7 lines radiating out from there. And I mean, honestly, maybe you could do like a stupid pilot line, but it would look pretty stupid.
Well, I think so. Atlanta has MARTA, and MARTA is part of the era of metro in the U.S. that simultaneously tried to do a subway style system and a commuter rail system mixed in one.
Yeah.
This is BART. This is WMATA in D.C. and this is the
Miami,
and
Baltimore,
kind of.
yeah.
And then Atlanta, of course. Patco is kind of like that here in Philly, but basically you're replacing a lot of your commuter rail service with these metro systems, and like that is kind of a good thing. But they kind of what happens is the further out stations just turn into parking rides, and it's just like, oh, we're reversing that nowadays, where we're turning them more into transit villages, but. It's one of those situations where a lot of the times that the way you can justify these systems being built for people is you just turn the outer stations into parking rides. So I don't know. The whole Southeast has problems. I mean, all I want is a train between Atlanta to Savannah. Because Savannah deserves more train service because it's honestly one of the best cities in the U.S.
Savannah's a cool city.
Yeah.
It looks like New Orleans may come out ahead with a whole bunch of train service, which is nice.
That would be cool.
Yeah. New Orleans has a severely underused rail terminal.
Surprisingly big.
Yeah, it's big. It's okay. It's not. I wouldn't say it's like super nice.
No.
They need a bar in there.
It's New Orleans. They need a bar.
Yeah, they need a bar in there. It's surprising they don't have a bar in there. You come out of the train, you come out of the Crescent. The first thing you see, it's like 9 p.m. because you got off the Crescent.
Yeah.
Right. In my case, I think it was an hour late over the trip.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, it wasn't very bad at all, honestly. And the first thing you're greeted with is like the world's tallest abandoned building.
Is that the hospital?
No, it's like the big one with like they used to have the rotating restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it doesn't have a rotating. No, it does not have a rotating restaurant. It's like a square version of a rotating restaurant. And you know, you just see like where panels have fallen off it, and you're like, wow, this is terrible. And you go out. There's a streetcar station right there, but the streetcar was not operating. You know, which is very bad. You know, because that would make a lot of sense. And the way they've expanded the New Orleans streetcars is like really stupid, because you put the streetcar on the neutral ground, except on all the new routes where they run in traffic. You didn't have to run these in traffic. You had loads of space to not run them in traffic. I have many opinions about public transit in New Orleans.
All right, let's find some stupid ones.
Yeah. Hello and welcome back to Half in the Bag. What about trains?
Okay, so this is from our Urban Jersey guy who also has a good transit channel. What is your most controversial, in your opinion, transit take? I mean, there's a lot of Monorail reacts on this one, so I'm just going to say Monorail good, especially in a situation where you need to run the system mainly on like elevated, like for the entire system. Then Monorail is not a bad choice. Other than that, what other, do you have any?
Suburban buses are great. We need a lot more of them, like immediately. You don't necessarily need to reform suburban land use patterns to get a lot of ridership out of suburban buses if you just run them more frequently. Boom. That's my controversial take. You could get a lot more people on the buses in the suburbs right now without altering anything other than running the buses more frequently to more places.
This is why NJ Transit is one of the best systems in the country.
Yeah.
Let's see.
You don't need some kind of grand rezoning plan that won't happen to have better suburban transit.
There's just a very broad question that says NJ Transit or SEPTA ?
Well, I usually take SEPTA because it goes where I need to go. NJ Transit does not.
I mean, I I have to. I'm part of the party, so I have to say NJ Transit.
You want to fight? You want to fight on this? You wanna fight?
I will not be commenting on the shoe on head comment.
Oh my god.
She follows me on Twitter, that's all I will say.
Wow.
What do you think, unironically, is the best monorail in the world?
Best
This is
monorail.
asked by one of my mods, Sulo, on my Discord.
Well, I've heard Ogdenville and North Haverbrook have very nice monorails. I haven't been there.
I mean, Japan has a few good examples of actually good monorails. The obvious one that you can look at to say, like, it's the best is Disney World, of course. But if we're talking about real transit, probably Japan has a few of them. There's a Tokyo one that I think goes to the airport, I think it is. That's probably one of the best ones. There's also the Chunganga line, which I think is the one in China, that goes through the apartment building that, like, all the normies are like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
it's futuristic," or whatever.
That was due to a dispute with the developer over who owned development rights there versus that one transit company.
I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Monorail. I mean, the Seattle one is cool. It just doesn't go anywhere.
Best monorail is probably Wuppertal.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I don't think
Yeah.
you're going to do better than that.
No.
Monorail as a concept, I mean, it's just not. It's just so difficult to build the switches and crap that it's like it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Pretty much ever. I mean, even Disney World doesn't build any new monorails. They just have bus shuttles everywhere.
Yeah.
You know.
That's just a lack of Walt Disney being a foamer at.
I was about to say that. You gotta get Walt Disney back, and then he can do anti-unionism, anti-Semitism, and more monorails.
Anti-bus.
Yeah.
This is all trains.
Yeah.
Ward
Kimball.
Yeah. I mean, apparently Walt Disney's head is frozen under Walt Disney World, so bring the man back.
That'll do it, yeah.
I mean, my go-to answer when someone's like, "What's the most underrated city in the U.S.?" I always say Cleveland.
Yeah.
Because Cleveland, you can literally buy like a house for $90,000, and it's a decent house.
Oh yeah. You can go see the Christmas Story house there.
Yeah, and you can also ride one of the 3 mass transit lines into like Cleveland, which is like. I think Cleveland has the best per capita per transit ratio of any city, I would think, in the U.S.
What's the bus network like?
It's okay. It's not amazing, but it's kind of like SEPTA. So,
Yeah, that's the thing I would immediately think is, okay, if I'm not on like Shaker Heights lines, am I going to be able to go anywhere?
Question from pizza_time. Do you think America and New Jersey in specific are moving in the right direction when it comes to density, ? Public transit, ? I think whether America likes it or not, it has to. I think that a lot of the ways we've been building things, a lot of people are figuring out are very unsustainable, not only in just like an ecological way and like climate change way, but just in a financial way. And like the strong towns thing, even though like Chuck is not the coolest individual in the world, I think he's a very smart individual when it comes to housing, is that it's very easy to point out that, yeah, the suburbs are incredibly inefficient in how they're built and how like we can maintain them in a economic standpoint. So, I think it's kind of forcing it in that direction, whether people like it or not. I think that's the thing that a lot of people have to understand. So
I feel like density is like, especially like North Jersey, okay, they're permitting a lot of these new apartment buildings. You have to ask like qualitative questions, like, are these apartment buildings like good buildings? And I think the biggest problem right now in urbanism is not like thinking qualitatively about the buildings you're allowed to build, right? Because you have you have a building code that essentially mandates that every building over like 4 stories has to be built like it's 80 stories tall. And then you have exclusively double-loaded corridor buildings. They like have, you know, so your apartments only have a single exposure. You can't get a cross breeze. You might have a building that has like a loud side and a quiet side, and you either get a loud or quiet apartment. You know, you have we don't have like a sustainable way to build good apartments. So like ask me about like the raw density. You know, it's great you have a whole lot of units, but they're all like 1-bedroom units. You know, there's nothing that like...
You want some 3-4 bedroom units.
You want some 3-4 bedroom units. You want something that's like bigger. Maybe you want some like co-housing, or they call it Baugruppen in Germany. We don't talk about like ownership models of these buildings. We don't talk about like... everything's built on like sort of the developer-renter model, as opposed to many other ways that buildings can be built. I mean, you can have... You know, starting and ending at zoning is a terrible way to think about it. That's my thing.
Well, if you were to change building code,
yeah,
what would be one thing you would focus on to change?
Point access.
Which means?
Point access is when you have, rather than a double-loaded corridor building, where you have like a bank of elevators maybe in the middle, you got a stairway at each end, right, and you have a corridor in the middle. Yeah. Right. Point access means that you have a building that's maybe the same size, but it's divided into like maybe 3-4 individual units with like a firewall between them, and then there's point access in each one. You have like maybe 2 elevators and 1 stairwell, and that means you have a lot more flexibility with the apartment design, and you can build better apartments.
So basically, right? What you're doing is you're kind of like truncating it to sort of row home-esque construction where they're separate.
And this is extremely common in Europe. And we are basically at the mercy of fire codes here in the United States. You can't build like that because you need 2 means of egress, right? But safety is always a trade-off, and in this case, the trade-off has been made very strongly in favor of safety at the expense of livability. And, you know, in Europe, they consider the second means of egress in these buildings is when the fire company shows up with the ladder truck, you know. And there's obviously there are some issues with this, especially if you're with like access for let's say disabled people. If you only have 1 elevator and the elevator's out of service, but there's also been really creative ways to address that, like temporary exterior elevators. You know, it's they're much more flexible about what they can do over in Europe, and they get better buildings as a result. I mean, our buildings are just not good. They're really like, you look at them and like the buildings are bad, and like I think it's okay to acknowledge a lot of the buildings are bad, but we're only allowed to build the bad ones. We can't build the good ones.
So if you could make a certain type of apartment building, like materials and design, what would be the optimal design for you?
You do some kind of point access, like courtyard style building, which is incredibly common in Europe and almost completely illegal in the United States.
Those are really popular in like Eastern European areas.
And you have like the you know, the building faces the street. Most of the apartments, they'll have, you know, an exterior wall that faces the street and one that faces the interior courtyard. I mean, and if you have point access, you can do this really easily. But if you have our sort of double-loaded corridor designs, they're impossible. Then it cuts
the apartments in half.
Yeah, they're impossible. You can't do them.
You couldn't be on both sides. You
can sort of do like the Corbusier style, whatchamacallit, like the Unité thing. And there's at least 1 building in Philly that does that. And those are good apartments, but those are like big, expensive apartments too.
By Brick Block 1, what type/voltage is the best electrification for trains? I mean, the standard is pretty much 25 kilovolt, 60 hertz or 50 hertz AC. I mean, I have heard there was one boomer that argued with me that 50 kilovolts should be the standard because you don't need as many transmission stations, but
what works.
Yeah, honestly, whatever rolling stock you have, and like The problem with 50 kilovolts is all your insulators need to be double the size. So like you do spend more money on insulators versus transmission stations. So
also, if you're at 25 kilovolts, I believe you can just pull directly from the mains. You don't need transformers.
yeah.
Yeah, so that makes that a lot easier. Don't quote me on that. I am not a railway electricity expert.
What is the worst planned city/metro area in all of the U.S.? And would you say what is the worst planned region in all of the U.S.? Ooh, I'd say Arizona.
Arizona is a good contender. I think some of the water issues that are frequently mentioned are overblown because that's mostly an agricultural issue rather than like a city issue. I think what's really badly planned? Let me get Tyson's Corner, Virginia.
Oh yeah, that's on like the Silver Line or whatever. Oh yeah, that's so bad. I don't know.
Trying to urbanize a big cloverleaf, I think, was not a great idea. Implemented, not great. I think the public transit there is insufficient, despite the fact they got heavy rail metro there. Sure, whatever. But it's like also, how am I going to cross the street here?
Well, if we were to choose somewhere that's not in the southwest of the United States, it would probably be Florida.
Yeah.
Or somewhere like, probably somewhere in like central to northwest Florida is like the worst areas in Florida when it comes to like any type of urbanism. It's just, I don't know what, like, it's just, Florida is a mixture, like the only good urbanism in Florida is like St. Augustine and like Miami. And the rest of Florida is just like, oh no, what are you doing?
Like Merrifield, Fairfax Boulevard, all Northern Virginia places. You got these people that are trying to build, they're trying to make it urban, but they're not gonna invest in like the transportation that makes it possible. King of Prussia too, that's another thing. King of Prussia, you've got all these apartment buildings. And everyone has to drive there, and it's like, well, it's sort of I don't know how Potemkin urbanism.
But don't worry,
you've got some big apartment buildings, sure, but everyone still has to drive here. You've not achieved anything. You've made it. You're just building Houston.
But don't worry, there's going to be a branch line of the Norristown High Speed Line that will be built for $2 billion that will solve this.
I think that problem, that project is less bad than everyone says it is, but it's still not good.
It's still not good. In my opinion, they should spend half of that money building a DMU service from 30th Street Station down the Norfolk Southern Line to King of Prussia, and for like a commuter rail type style.
Oh yeah.
And then use the other half of that money to do high platforms on all of the regional rail system.
They're doing that at a good clip already. I mean, it could be faster, but
yeah.
I just want to see it do my station finally, 49th Street.
Yeah.
Give me something more than a bus shelter. Come on.
All right, so this is from SP Roach on my YouTube community page. Here's one. If the Jones Act had never been passed or had been repealed prior to 1970, how would that have affected freight rail, and how would that have affected passenger rail? If the Jones Act were repealed now, how much room would that open up for passenger rail? All right, we'll stop there because there's a lot more to the question, but we're just going to talk about the Jones Act.
Yeah, I was about to say we got the token Jones Act question. Everyone wants to hear about the Jones Act, and the issue is, I think, with the way inland waterway shipping works in the United States, if you repealed the Jones Act, I don't think it would have done very much. I genuinely don't think it would have done almost anything at all. So
most of the inland shipping in the United States happens between somewhere in the Mississippi and the rest of the United States. So you're probably not, even if you repeal the Jones Act now, you're probably not going to get many foreign companies coming up the Mississippi.
What you're going to wind up doing is breaking the only unionized industry in the South.
Pretty much.
That would be your big one right there. And I mean, even some Jones Act compliant barge companies are not union right now. So that's a big issue.
So, so part of the so one of the biggest things people argue for repealing the Jones Act is anything regarding Puerto Rico.
Yes.
As you've done in an episode.
We did do an episode recently on the SSL Faro.
The Jones Act directly affects basically what it is only U.S. Vessels can travel between U.S. ports. So that means no outer country can have a vessel that goes between U.S. ports. So that basically makes it so it's a sort of no other force can come in or business can come in from outside the United States and do business between the two ports. That's kind of the idea.
It can't be like a foreign flagged vessel. It has to be American crew, American flagged. It has to be American built as well. Jones Act's very restrictive on what can go between two U.S. ports. You can sort of get around it if you go to like a foreign port in between, but I think there's also some restrictions on like what cargo can be transferred.
Go to Bermuda, come back.
Yeah, cruise ships can get around it pretty easily, but like if you're moving freight, it's a little harder.
Because go directly, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the Jones Act is one of those things that most people, when they talk about it, they either talk about repealing it or keeping it, but they don't talk about something in between. Like, I think that there should be something in between, probably.
Well, I think the Jones Act is fine.
That too.
It's fine.
I mean, I don't have much
care about it.
I don't have much opinions on it because I honestly don't think in the grand scheme of things it affects as much as people think it affects.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of other issues that affect a lot more things than just the Jones Act. The Jones Act honestly just makes it so there has to be intra-trade in the United States, and that's it. Like, yeah.
It's also like, okay, like what are your staples of like inland waterway shipping now, right? Coal, iron ore, timber sometimes. A lot of this bulk traffic, right? And it's not, all that stuff's falling off because we don't have industry in the United States anymore. If you repealed the Jones Act, it might be slightly cheaper to ship stuff by barge, but it's already absurdly cheap to ship stuff by barge. It's just that it takes a long time. Like, I don't think if suddenly we allow like some Liberian flagged vessels up the Tennessee Tombigbee waterway, like all of a sudden there's going to be like this massive surge in barge traffic for like Amazon.
I can't wait.
I don't think that's going to happen.
The Somalian flagged vessel going up the Susquehanna.
I don't think Somalia is Somalia a flag of convenience.
It's mainly like South American countries and certain African countries. I think.
Liberia, Panama is one.
What's the one in the Indian Ocean? Well, here's a very slightly different question before our camera battery runs out. Again, English Crumpet says, what's the minimum population for things like a metro system to be worthwhile?
Like 300 people.
I mean, theoretically...
Like one little mountain town in Austria, I want to say.
It has like a tourist line or something?
It's not a tourist line. It's you can use it for like daily errands, but it's like a horizontal elevator.
Yeah.
There's also that town in Italy as a full-fledged
like
metro.
A tiny one.
Yeah, it's like a town of like 50,000 people. Oslo is like the size of Roanoke, Virginia, and has like 6 metro lines.
This is true.
Yeah, including the metro line with the highest elevation change of any metro line in the world.
It's like the east-west one, I think, on there.
Because like it's like line T1. It goes from slightly below sea level.
It's all the way up to a ski resort.
It goes all the way up. Yeah, I've been all the way to the end of it, but it was busted to at the time, so I took the bus up. It was not good. I was just looking at this railroad line the whole way, and I was like, I wish I was on that instead of this bus. And I went up there, and I had a not very good food. The food was not good.
Well, again,
it was like 2,500 feet in the air.
But if you want an American question, we can look to the best American city for this, which is Cleveland, which I think has a population of like 350K, I think.
And the metro area is still pretty big, though.
Yeah, but
Cleveland's not that small of a place.
It's kind of like the Boston situation, where when people are like, "Oh, Boston only has like 800,000 people," well, that's only because like Boston never consumed the other municipalities next to it, like Chicago did.
Cuyahoga County is still about the same size as Cleveland was at its height.
Yeah.
Cleveland, again, is not that small. All those Ohio cities are pretty big, deceptively big. No one will tell you how big Columbus or Cincinnati is, because then these coastal elites will start getting ashamed that they say these places don't exist. Anyway.
But literally, if you want to look at the smallest city with an actual metro, it's probably going to be Cleveland. I can't think of any other city in the U.S. that has like a smaller population with a metro system.
You know who had a metro system?
Cincinnati.
Sioux City, Iowa.
Oh, that's right. They had the elevator.
Or was
right?
it Sioux Falls? I forget which.
It was one of them.
I think it was Sioux Falls, actually, which I'm not sure if that's in Iowa or not. They had elevated rail. So did Lexington, Kentucky. Who else had some smaller place that had some weird...
Was there some Pennsylvania towns?
A couple that had Jonestown had a very extensive streetcar system.
Oh man, wait till I do a video on Jonestown, because there's a few people in my Discord.
Johnstown, not Jonestown.
Johnstown, that's it, yeah.
Jonestown
would be
that's a different situation right there.
That's this talking. No, Johnstown is very unique, and it is one of those that is often overlooked by, again, it's one of those towns that millennials and Zoomers will complain, I can't afford a house, and that's because they're not looking at Jonestown, PA.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, of course, you got it's just hard to get anywhere from there. Unless you're willing to drive 4 hours to go
unless Pittsburgh actually had a commuter rail or regional rail that actually went to Jonestown, which, in a better world.
You're saying Jonestown again. We should
Johnstown.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to do a lot of curve straightening. You'd have to do all kinds of bullshit to make that service work properly. You have to electrify all the way from Pittsburgh
to Johnstown.
to Johnstown to Altoona to Harrisburg. Honestly,
well, you should just electrify. Yeah, you should do the whole thing.
Electrify the whole thing.
You should do what the Pennsylvania wanted to do, which is go all the way to Chicago and electrify.
Well, honestly, at that point, as a high-speed rail corridor, I think it's pretty viable, and I think you have to make some
the Altoona base tunnel.
Yeah, you do a horseshoe curve base tunnel. I mean, if you ever looked at the PennDOT study, they did a really high-level study a while back about improving rail service on the Pennsylvania main line. And they were really lazy about it. It was not very good, because it was okay, here are our options, which is either some minor track improvements, or we do full high-speed rail. We've identified one corridor where that works, and that's just to build it along the Pennsylvania Turnpike. It's kind of well, that doesn't seem right. And you'll have a branch up to State College, and it's kind of I don't know that this is the smart move, guys.
So,
I don't think that's the way you do it.
I will eventually make a video on Pennsylvania restoring rail service again, and probably copying NJ Transit in their model of how they run state services. But the one thing that they should do is just restore the Pennsylvanian all the way out to Pittsburgh the way that they ran in the past, and then have the branch lines come off of it like they did in the past. That's literally just copy that. Just do that.
I used to run 14, 15 passenger trains a day between Philly and Pittsburgh.
Pretty much.
One each way. It's pretty miserable. And it's not even convenient, because, ideally what you would want to do is you take the Pennsylvanian out to take a nice weekend in Pittsburgh, where you can get beer for $1, right? And then you can come back later on, after the weekend, or get back in time to work on, get back in time for your horrible hangover on Monday. Right, and you can't do that because the schedules are just not set up that way.
This is no one talks about this, but the best part about Rust Belt cities is that you can go there and literally have beers for $1 or $2.
I went there last time. Not last time I was there. Liam and I went there. We drove out there. I forget what the occasion was. I think we were just going to Pittsburgh, and we go to the hotel. It was in Oakland, right? And it was a really shitty hotel. Oh my God, it looked like hell. And the hotel restaurant was a Panera, which was weird. Anyway, we go to the bar down the street and they have $1 beers, and we're like, "What kind of beer?" And they call it American beer. It was just called American beer. It came in and everyone should have that experience without having to drive.
This is true. Also, our other camera, I think, ran out of space, so we're going to use the GoPro now to finish this off. But I think that's it for all the questions today.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for the 100K, I guess, AMA sort of thing. It just turned into rants a lot of the times.
This is true.
Honestly, that works. So thanks again. And thanks to my Patreons, of course. And thanks to Roz showing up today.
Howdy doody.
And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.